Half these people came here tonight, Jack, to watch you catch the ball. Other half came to see you drop it. I was gonna throw it to you, just to show you up, but I want to win. I'm calling somebody else's number.
I can get open.
You drop that damn thing again, Jack, your life is over.
Just throw me the goddamn ball, Reno.
Hello. I'm Katie, and welcome to Retromade, your pop culture rewind. Are you ready for another trip down memory lane? Today, we're going to travel back to January of 1986 to discuss the sports dramedy, The Best of Times, and all of the other happenings going on at that time. And today, I could not be more honored to have Craig Cohen here with me today. He has been podcasting for quite a while and is one of the favorites from the Last of the Action Heroes podcast network. And despite us both being on that network and both covering Sylvester Stallone, happy belated birthday, Sly, by the way, this is actually the first time that Craig and I are officially meeting. Can you believe it?
I know it's crazy, and thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoy the concept of your show, and I'm looking forward to talking to this movie because, according to my Google searches, I couldn't really find anybody else that has talked about this.
That would not surprise me.
But with the title of the movie, it's kind of hard. Anytime you put "best" in a search engine, it comes up with things. But I always love talking movies that haven't really gotten a lot of podcast coverage.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, thank you again for joining me. Do you want to
it's my pleasure.
Give us a quick little rundown of what you're working on?
Yeah, aside from the guest spots I do on the network, I think the main show you'll hear me on is the sort of monthly or almost monthly show that I do with Ryan and Doug. And we, have been burning through most of Sly's lesser fun movies or quality movies. So that's my main podcast outlet right now. And then during the pandemic, I was furloughed for about 15 months, and it allowed me to have a lot of time to spend with my wife and my dogs. But it also allowed me to sort of re-explore my love of making music. So that's really what I spend a lot of my my free time on is, instrumental based, weird sounding music that I have a lot of fun making.
It's impressive.
Whether or not people have fun listening. Oh, thank you. It's a really, really fun process. Like for me, making music is like solving a math problem almost. You start with something and then you're like, well, how do I get to where it's going to sound the way it needs to sound? It's been cool. It's been a fun process, and it's something I really enjoy doing. And it's kind of filled a little void that was created when I stopped really, really, really actively podcasting. And I've said this on pretty much every podcast I guest on, but as the creator and host of this show, I'm sure how much work goes into creating even a 90-minute podcast. I appreciate all the work podcasters do, and having produced and edited shows myself. Some of those Slycast episodes we did were close to 3 hours, and like,
oh wow,
editing a 3-hour show is just not fun, especially when you're as meticulous as I tended to be when I was editing. I appreciate all the work podcasters do. And one thing about the network is the quality of shows we have and the lineup that Ryan has assembled. It's really remarkable. And I think the network is such a cool thing. And one of your favorite podcasters on the network isn't podcasting. Somebody else is putting great content up there. And I hate the fact that I just said content, but
I'm the same way. I hate it when people say content creator. It's a big pet peeve. Like it's an ick to me somehow, but yeah.
As creative, most of us are doing this because we enjoy it and we get something out of it. So the fact that, you can say something that's artistic in nature is content, it just sort of makes it sound like something you feed into the internet meat grinder.
Agreed.
But we've been so conditioned to call it content, it even slipped into my vernacular.
Same. Well said. And listeners, unlike me, Craig is very well spoken. So we'll be treated to that over the course of today's episode. Let's get into the 1980s frame of mind by opening the time capsule from January of 1986. Now, the 1985-86 primetime season, the popular shows included, as always, it seems, The Cosby Show, Family Ties, Murder, She Wrote, Cheers, Dallas, and Dynasty, The Golden Girls, and this was actually their premiere season, and they're always in the top rankings for any season they're on. I'm a huge Golden Girls fan. Miami Vice, Who's the Boss, and Night Court. So that's topping the ratings that year.
Yeah, and I think that was Miami Vice's second season, I think, because I think they started in the fall of 84. Miami Vice, one of my all-time favorite shows.
Really? Did you like the movie?
Yeah.
Movies?
I did.
Plural, I guess.
I did. And the thing I appreciated about it is, Miami Vice had this element where Don Johnson's character, Sonny, was undercover. And I think as the seasons went on, they got a little bit more into the undercover aspect of his job. But that was one thing I think the movie did remarkably well. And, Michael Mann is a very detail-oriented guy. And that movie really explored undercover from a law enforcement perspective in a way that I think was a lot more detailed than, most of the time we see in movies. And you're never going to get the accurate experience. But the idea of what they did to establish covers and how far back they needed to establish people and what databases they needed to populate so if searches were run. And then also just really to show the toll that undercover work takes on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe like Donnie Brasco was another movie that explored that pretty well. And then there was just some tremendous action sequences in Miami Vice, and not like spectacular, easy, out of this world stuff, but there were some like gunfights. One in particular was like in a scrapyard where they had like a 50 cal. And I remember seeing that in theaters, and like when they shot that 50 caliber, like you felt it, just because the movie, at least the movie theater I saw it in, like they used to play everything so like ridiculously loud. Funny story, like probably around the time like Armageddon was out, me and a buddy went to see like a smaller movie that summer, and like in the small movie when it was quiet, you could like, hear Armageddon next door because it was so loud.
I remember that effect happening as well.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because Miami Vice is not like a kid's show, but it's so funny how, people around my age, probably your age, and probably not even like, I'm probably generalizing just because of my experiences, but like being exposed to things as a kid that aren't for kids really sort of help shape, the things that you go on to appreciate.
I could not agree more. Throughout doing these episodes, I've come to learn that I'm the youngest child as well. So I saw a lot of things probably that weren't appropriate for me to see, but I'm glad that I did. I think I just have a different frame of reference than younger people these days.
It's always funny because everybody thinks that their experience in childhood was markedly different than, the kids today. But, kids today, 20, 30 years from now, they're going to have the same remember when moments. They're not going to be framed the same as ours, but they're still going to, kind of, looking back and nostalgia and, that kind of viewpoint is always going to exist. And that's one of the interesting things about getting older is just the things you look back on, the things that made an impact on you. And then also like seeing yourself slowly, get out of touch, especially when you see like, TikTok trends and things like that. And you're like, wow, I just don't get it. And that's okay because I'm not supposed to. But like, you understand why like parents went ape shit when like Elvis came out.
That's a good point. You're making me feel old though now, Chris. But that's true. While not in the top rankings, some of the notable premieres of this season included 227. Do you remember that show with Marla Gibbs?
Yeah, that was Jack Hay.
Jack Hay.
Yeah, that was a spinoff of The Jeffersons.
I thought it might have been. Was The Jeffersons set? I'm a little confused because 227 was set in Washington, D.C.
Okay, yeah, no, Jeffersons was New York City.
But maybe they just moved or something.
Well, it's always funny how like they would get creative with spinoffs because it's like, oh, we like this character, but we don't meet them in the same setting.
That's true.
Another interesting spinoff that a lot of people don't know is Family Matters with Urkel
Mhm.
was a spinoff of Perfect Strangers.
Perfect
Because
Stranger.
I think the wife on Family Matters was like the elevator
Yes.
operator at their building.
You're right. You're right. Because Family Matters came later. Yes, that's exactly right. There were a lot of spin-offs at this time.
You know what else is funny? One thing that's great about streaming is there's still a lot of stuff you can't stream, but there's a lot of stuff that even like 10 years ago, like unless you were like buying complete season DVDs, it was hard to watch. But
Mhm.
one of the funniest things is like watching a show from like the 80s and seeing like these secret pilot episodes for other shows. So it's like, we're going to try and spin off this
Mhm.
show. This episode, like the main cast won't really be in it. There'll be like other characters that we're going to try and spin off. And then either the show spun off successfully or it was like they made that episode. It didn't hit the way it was supposed to. And now it's just this like weird episode that doesn't feature, like in Miami Vice's case, you know, I don't think there is one, but like that doesn't feature Crockett and Tubbs.
You know, it's funny that that's a really good point, and it's blatant when you see it. There was one in the Golden Girls where they were
Okay.
trying to spin off. It ended up being the Empty Nest spinoff, but the people in the episode that they were trying to spin off, the original, like that episode, none of those people, except for Charlie Leisure's, David
They
Leisure,
recast everybody
David
else. Yeah.
Leisure's character, Charlie, was the only one who stayed, and everyone, the set was the same. It was the same house, but the entire cast
Yeah.
was different. And it is notoriously the worst Golden Girls episode, despite having Rita Moreno in it.
It's funny to see like, you know, what ingredients get, you know, worked on when a pilot or a show is being developed. Three's Company, which is another show I have a lot of fondness for.
Same.
There's like 3 different pilot episodes where there's like a different Janet, a different Chrissy.
Oh,
It
really?
was like, yeah, it was just like, let's see what chemistry people have with Jack. And on the first one, they're like, well, obviously this Chrissy isn't working, so we're going to replace her. I think they're on the first season or the second season DVD. They included them as bonus features.
Oh,
But
cool.
I always get a kick out of watching pilot episodes that were redone. Star Trek is another classic one. Star Trek is one of my all-time favorite shows. The original pre-Captain Kirk pilot episode is really interesting to watch, and they actually ended up like cannibalizing that episode in a later episode once it went to series, where like they used footage from that episode and kind of tied it together. I mean, if you watch that original Star Trek pilot, Spock is like just different enough that you're like,
Oh,
what's going on
okay.
with Spock and things. It's wild how much thought used to go into television, and I'm not sure a lot goes into television, you know, thinking about television anymore, you know, in terms of, I think they've got it figured out enough. They're like, you know, we know what character types we need, and things like that. Whereas, I don't know, it seems like TV in the 70s and 80s, it was kind of still like the wild, wild.
It was. There's a lot of formula involved, but I agree. There was more risks to be taken or something, it seems. So Growing Pains also premiered this season, which I loved that show. And that's more formulaic family show. But then we have Small Wonder, the little girl robot. So that's very
Uh-huh.
off the wall. And then Mr. Belvedere.
Oh,
I
yeah.
loved that. And what's interesting
Yeah.
is that they're just a regular middle-class family that somehow can afford to have a butler. And that's also a theme, I think, that was throughout the 80s and 90s a little bit.
And that was that trend that continued. Like Three's Company was based on a British sitcom, and so was
Okay.
Mr. Belvedere, I believe. Yeah, like that was a big thing. And even up until The Office, you know, The Office was a UK show that they were like,
Yep.
oh, let's adapt it for US audiences. Mr. Belvedere is a show I remember us watching. Growing Pains was one I remember us watching. It's weird though, because, you know, a lot of times I try and like think about, was I watching that first run, or was it like when it hit syndication and I would watch it like when I got home from school?
I remember Three's Company, but I was not old enough to have watched it. So a
Mhm.
lot of the shows that I have references to, I believe I was watching in syndication reruns of them in many cases.
Yeah.
But Moonlighting also premiered this season, MacGyver. I remember very much watching, my mom must have liked Moonlighting and my dad must have liked MacGyver. That was classic. And then also WWF Primetime Wrestling
Oh my
on the
goodness.
USA Network. Were you a wrestling
Mhm.
fan?
Yeah. It's so funny because I'm in an age group where like, we are related to people that watched wrestling when it was still considered a competitive sport.
Okay.
So like, my dad's grandparents, my great grandparents, they would watch, WWF matches in the, 50s and 60s. And, the business hadn't been exposed yet. So we definitely grew up around that and sort of the golden age of WWF, where it transitioned from like Bob Backlund to Hulk Hogan, and
Mhm.
it kind of got more theatric, and like WrestleMania exploded. Wrestling was a big part of our time growing up. They used to come through, and this is so funny because of how big wrestling is now, but they used to come through the boys club like maybe 4 times a year.
Oh,
And it was just like, your typical high school gymnasium. So it would be a couple hundred people. And you wouldn't get the super big stars, like you wouldn't get Macho Man or Hogan, but you get like Junkyard Dog or
oh,
Don Morocco.
okay.
And then I also remember before pay-per-view, WrestleMania 2, I believe, we watched on closed circuit. So you'd go to the boys club, you buy a ticket, and they'd have probably what by today's standard is like a real shitty screen and projector.
Yeah.
And you'd watch, the closed circuit feed with everyone else. And then probably the next year is when they finally figured out how to like do pay-per-view, and you were able to just order it through your cable provider at home. But yeah, no, wrestling was a big part of my my adolescence.
Yeah, that seems to be a common theme. It was even for me. My grandpa watched it a lot.
The other funny thing about wrestling is, you mentioned primetime wrestling, but there was on USA Network, they used to do the Cartoon Express, I think,
Yes,
on Saturday
I
mornings.
loved it. I
Yeah,
talked about it on another previous episode, I
y-
think.
yeah. So the Cartoon Express would end, and then they'd have like whatever the 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. WWF show was. I don't remember
Yeah.
what they called it. So I think that's what kind of got kids, and they were like, we're going to go from cartoons to wrestling. So I think a lot of kids were just introduced or exposed to wrestling through that. And, the proximity to cartoons sort of uh, continued to engage that sort of fantasy element of a kid's mind. No, that was a great time to watch wrestling
It
because you
was.
still thought it was real, but there was rumblings that it
Yeah.
wasn't. So it was kind of like a Santa Claus factor,
Yeah.
like,
Good way to put it.
where you're like at the point where you're like, I don't. Logic says I shouldn't believe, but I still, believe a little bit. I've always leaned towards that, like, in the Mulder and Scully of the X-Files personalities.
hmm
I always lean way heavier Mulder. Like I'm like I want to believe it.
Okay. I like that. I do. Now, continuing on with, I don't know, the time that butlers were really popular, these were shows that ended in 86. Benson and Different Strokes, both had butlers or was some sort of live-in person that helped around the house. And then Knight Rider. I never watched Knight Rider though. Did you?
Oh yeah, Knight Rider was big for that car. I mean, anytime you had a kick-ass car, like you got the kids, Dukes of Hazzard, Knight
Okay.
Rider.
That totally makes sense. Now, I'm not going to go into a ton of cartoons because there's a lot of repeats that we've already covered. And we talked about the
Yeah,
Cartoon Express, but one that I had to call out because it premiered this season was She-Ra, Princess of Power, the twin sister to
yeah,
He-Man. Did you watch either of them or were you into He-Man?
yeah. I think we might have been just starting to age out
Yeah.
because I remember some of my younger cousins were like super He-Man. And I think we were still like G.I. Joe guy. Me and
Okay.
my brother were like G.I. Joe guys. But I remember like going over my cousin's house and they would have all the He-Man stuff. But I don't really remember watching that cartoon too much. It's one of those things where it's so big and so popular that you can't help but like know all the names
Yeah.
of all the characters and all those kinds of things. But yeah, I think I might have been just at the tail end. It's like the same thing with like Ninja Turtles as well.
Same. I'm the same with that because I'm a girl, but in my periphery, I'm aware of it. And it's become like a pop culture phenomenon. So, but for those of you who really liked She-Ra or He-Man, I loved She-Ra. Her name is Adora and
Mhm.
his name was Adam. So Adora and Adam. And her horse or her flying unicorn, I didn't recall that his name was Swiftwind and that
Okay.
He-Man's green tiger is Battle Cat. I think I remember Battle Cat more so, but
Yeah, Battle Cat, I remember.
nice little blast from the past there. So the movie we're covering is January of 1986. So we're just a month after Christmas. This was huge for the toy season that Christmas.
Mm.
Do you have any guesses for what the big toys of that season were?
we're too late for Cabbage Patch Kids, right?
Nope. Cabbage Patch Kids is
Oh, wow.
one. Yeah.
Okay. God, those were like the craze behind Cabbage Patch Kids was crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to say maybe like Pound Puppies.
I think that was actually like a year or two later that those got really big.
Okay.
But yeah, I loved those. But yeah, Cabbage Patch Kids this year, the biggest was Teddy Ruxpin.
Oh yeah,
Do you
you put
remember?
the cassette
Yeah.
in and he'd talk. Oh yeah, yeah.
I didn't
Mhm.
actually have one, but my neighbor did.
That those same He-Man cousins, they had a Teddy Ruxpin.
Okay.
Yeah.
My cousin. And then
Mhm.
Care Bears, of course, huge. I
Yeah.
actually still have
Yeah.
mine and my Cabbage Patch doll. And then for boys, I mean, it was very gender specific, it seems, back in the day.
Yeah.
The Transformers and G.I. Joe.
Oh yeah.
So those were the big
Yeah.
toys that year.
And I think Hasbro did both G.I. Joe and Transformers. They had some big ticket items. Like I don't remember what a Cabbage Patch doll cost.
They were
I
really
mean,
expensive.
yeah, but I think it was also a supply and demand thing. But
That's
like,
true.
I mean, was a Cabbage Patch doll $40?
I think
mean,
so.
like, what?
I think,
Yeah.
which would be like, I think I've looked up the equivalent. It would be like about $100 now, or maybe more.
Yeah,
Something like
yeah.
that.
But like G.I. Joe and Transformers, like G.I. Joe had their aircraft
Mhm.
carriers, and that thing had to be like probably like $60 or $70.
Oh, wow.
There was like a point where like, Transformers kind of like got involved in like, well, how can we steal some of like Voltron's audience? So they had
Oh.
all construction equipment that would form like one big, Voltron style Transformer. Constructicons maybe. They never got really creative with names. And that I remember that was like another big ticket. It was like a difference between selling like a $4 action figure and like the $60, aircraft carrier
Wow.
for them to all fight on.
Yeah. Christmas, like it was a big, and you couldn't buy things online. So you had to go physically to the store and
Yeah.
it's probably gone. You
Yeah.
have to, yeah, it was the whole thing. Thank you, Mom and Dad.
I thank you indeed. I still feel bad about the amount of money my parents spent on like stuff that just eventually either got sold for pennies on the dollar at a garage sale or just eventually got thrown out. As an adult, that's things you appreciate. You're like,
So much. Yeah.
like,
Yes. I very much appreciate the way that I grew up.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know if I'd have it in me to spend that kind of money, but
Well, I
Um,
waste a lot of money on my dogs. So I don't have the humans, just the dogs. And a lot of people are like, why would you spend that much money on X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Okay. Now, I usually do like the top 5 or the top 10 billboards from a music perspective. They went to 15 today because there's some good ones. And
Okay, awesome.
so many, and 2 from Rocky IV. Now, for those of you listening, so this movie, Best of Times, came out in January of 1986. Rocky IV was immensely popular, and it came out like over Thanksgiving, probably in
Yeah.
1985. So just a couple months previous. So that was like a huge thing going on at this time. But the number 1 top billboards is That's What Friends Are For by Dionne Warwick featuring Elton John, Gladys Knight, Stevie Wonder. You remember that song?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the number 2 song, this comes from Rocky IV. Do you have a guess, Craig?
God, I'm showing my lack of stream Sly knowledge. Jeez.
Burning Heart by Survivor. I can
Oh, okay.
literally
Yeah,
picture
yeah.
they like are showing up in Russia at this time when that comes on.
Two worlds collide, rival nations. It's a primitive clash, spinning years of frustration. Red, blue,
Yeah, that's a good one. And then Wham's I'm Your Man is number 3. Stevie Nicks has number 4 with Talk to Me. Say You, Say Me, Lionel Richie is number 5. Bruce Springsteen's My Hometown is number 6. And then number 7 is When the Going Gets Tough, The Tough Gets Going by Billy Ocean. And Paul McCartney with Spies Like Us is number 8. I don't think
Yeah, those are both movie songs, right? Like Spies Like Us was a movie.
was it a James Bond movie? It kind of sounds like it.
No, it was like a Chevy Chase. It was
Okay.
like a Dan Aykroyd. It was a comedy. And then of course
Billy-
that Billy Ocean song was that the Romancing the Was that the Jewel of the Nile?
Ooh, which one it is? It is one of those, and I should know because I
Yeah,
covered
I
both of
think
them.
I think 80. Yeah, I think 86 would have been Jewel of the Nile, right?
Yes. Mm, yeah,
Yeah.
probably like 84 and 86. So yes, it would have been Jewel of the Nile. Yep, you're
Yeah.
right.
Eyes Like Us. I'm not
Me
hearing it in my
neither.
head.
I can't picture that one. Number 9 is Walk of Life by Dire Straits.
Oh, that
Yeah.
was a big song.
Stevie Wonder's Go Home is number 10. And
Don't
How
know.
Will I Know is Whitney Houston
Oh,
is number 11.
yeah.
And then Conga is number 12 by Gloria Estefan.
Oh,
Yep,
Miami Sound
yep.
Machine. Yeah.
Kyrie by Mr. Mister.
Oh,
I can't
Mr.
picture
Yeah,
that
yeah.
song though.
I'd attempted, but I couldn't hit the notes as well as you
Oh,
just did
no.
before.
Yeah,
You'd know it if
okay.
you heard it.
And then I hadn't heard of this either. Number 14 is I Miss You by Climax. And Climax is spelled K-L-Y-M-A-X-X.
They were like kind of like those like proto like R&B type.
Okay. Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah, like kind of like that soft, like not a Rick
Yeah.
James R&B, but more
Like
like
Casey and JoJo or something like
uh,
that? Or
yeah, like kind of
Yeah.
smoother, like like less like more of like the radio
okay.
friendly, as opposed to like Rick James, which is like I'm gonna kick down your front
Yeah.
door and
Super
make you
freak.
need to take a shower after you
Yeah.
listen. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a guess? Number 15 is also for Rocky 4. So we've already done Burning Heart by Survivor. Is there another Rocky 4 song you remember?
Was Hearts on Fire in part 4?
It was, but it didn't top the charts this week.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Uh,
I'm gonna need some
well,
help.
we just had the 4th of July. Living in America, James Brown.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
I-
Yeah. Wow. So that was
Yeah, so that's number 15. So those were some fun billboards. We're in the mid 80s, very much so during this time. So lots of fun stuff.
yeah. And you mentioned Wham. There's
Oh,
that.
yeah.
They just put up that Wham documentary on Netflix, which we watched last night. Which
How was it?
was interesting. It's good. I was never a huge Wham fan, especially when Wham
Yeah, I'm
was Wham.
more
I
of
mean,
George Michael.
one of the things is as you get older, you start to appreciate at least the musicianship and the
Mhm.
talent involved. But like, in 1986, I was not listening to
No.
Wham. It was good. The interesting thing about it was they kind of framed it, and I don't know if this is like revisionism or it's just the way it was, but like they framed it as like everybody involved knew that Wham was just a vehicle to eventually get George Michael solo. Obviously, George Michael isn't here to clarify that, but they use a lot of archival interviews with him. And it seems like they always knew that like, they were going to take off and it was going to be a springboard to George Michael being a solo artist. And again, that was kind of a revelation that was really surprising to me. And it's also shocking, Katie, that like how short Wham's time was. It was like a 2-year
Yeah.
window where they went from obscurity to like superstardom, and then they were done and George Michael went off and did his solo career. It's cool though. It's one of those documentaries, and this is kind of a style I appreciate it. They did it with an Alice Cooper one a couple years ago where you don't see 2023 Andrew Ridgeley talking about Wham. You hear 2023 Andrew Ridgeley's voice, but you
Oh.
never see him on camera. They just use all archival footage. So anytime that you hear Andrew Ridgeley in 2023 talking, you're not
Hmm.
seeing him. And I think the cool thing about that for me, at least from a dissecting a filmmaking style, is you're not equating the older person you're seeing on screen with this young person that's doing things. So it kind of makes it seem like it's more immediate,
Mhm.
which I kind of appreciate. It's an interesting approach. And I'm sure like, when there's ego involved, I'm sure Andrew Ridgeley wanted to be seen on camera.
What? No, I'm to your point about you don't want to remember like whatever he looks like now. So if he probably looked really great in the 80s. And so if I were him, I kind of want people to remember me looking that way.
Well, that's another funny thing too, because like, I don't know if you remember, probably 10 years ago at this point, which is just funny how like time just
Oh my
ticks
God.
by
The
faster and
worst.
faster. They reissued all of the Phil Collins albums. They mastered them and put bonus tracks. But Phil Collins reshot all of the covers with like his older face.
Really?
So like No Jacket Required, like, which is just like a really tight shot on him. It's like, 65-year-old Phil Collins, which is interesting because I'm like, he didn't change any of the music, but he was like, yeah, this is what I look like now, and I want people to see it. So it's kind of interesting how different people or different celebrities deal with it. I mean, another one that was like famously that really sort of detailed growing old was Johnny Cash and those American recordings he did towards the end of his life. And even Bob Dylan has gone down that road too. Really interesting. And I'm so glad I'm at a point in my life where like I have a job and I don't depend on my creative side to put food on our table. But like you see bands going on
Oh,
tour,
so many.
you know, that were popular in the 60s and 70s. And these are artists that are in their 70s, 60s, 70s, sometimes in their 80s. And like the tour poster will have like them at 22. And I'm
That's what
like,
sells
you're
tickets.
selling like, yeah, exactly. And it like sometimes it really bums me out because like I'm a big Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys
Oh,
fan. And I went and saw Brian Wilson a couple of years ago, like probably a year before the pandemic. And like the poster, it was like 1968 Brian. And I'm like, yeah, you know, it's cool to see that. But I'm like, I'm going to see the 78-year-old version of that.
some can
It's,
pull it off though. I feel like very few though. The Rolling Stones, I feel like they're one that still kind of has it despite being really
oh,
old.
that was that same year that I saw Brian Wilson. Maybe 2 months earlier, we saw the Rolling Stones, which was like, we drove to Arizona for that because we didn't have the stadium here yet. And that was like the closest
Yeah.
show we could get tickets for. Ultimate bucket list item for me. Like I was like, I have to see the Rolling Stones before they aren't the Rolling
hmm
Stones anymore. And it was like the third to last show that Charlie Watts did
Yeah.
before he passed
Yeah.
away. So I remember sitting like in that stadium and like, the smile did not leave my face the entire time
I
we were
love
there.
that.
Like,
My sister and
yeah.
I went.
But it's just,
We just had the
oh yeah,
worst. Well, because we grew up, our dad he's like a huge Stones fan. So we grew up with it. And then they came to
yeah.
Denver and there was a ticket fiasco and we ended up with the worst seats in the stadium. It was
Um,
I guess I would recommend splurging. I mean, we did splurge. Like the tickets were super expensive, but I'm not a big stadium fan.
Stadiums are
Yeah.
not great. Was it that last tour, like the
Yeah, probably
2018-ish?
because Charlie was still with us. And I feel like
Yeah,
they're touring again. And then that same sister, because Aerosmith's coming, and she's like, "Do you want to go to Aerosmith?" I'm like,
yeah.
"No, I just kind of don't." I mean, I love Aerosmith, and I did see them. Thankfully, I did see them in concert. But even then, that was
Mhm.
probably in like '99, and so they weren't
Yeah.
the Aerosmith that I knew even then.
Yeah. I mean, but that was probably the best time to see that band in terms of like them at the peak of their performance ability, because like at that point, I think that like all of them
Clean,
were clean and
yeah.
sober at that point. They had been on the road for like years at that point. So like they were like as sharp as you could be. So that you probably saw them like
That's
probably the
true.
best time to see them. They did a residency here
Oh, that's right.
that ended up getting canceled because Steven Tyler went into rehab, and now they're doing like their farewell tour.
Mhm.
So I don't know if they're ever going to do that residency again, but like there's a really small intimate theater here, Dolby branded or whatever. And that's like the one cool thing about like residencies here in Las Vegas. You can see these artists in like really sort of like, you know, 2,500 seat environments, as opposed to like 40,000 seat stadium that's got shitty acoustics.
We could probably talk all day about old timer concerts. Before we get into the movie, there's just a few bits of news and events from January of 1986. Only in 1986 was the first MLK Day celebrated as a federal holiday. Like
Wow.
I
Yeah.
guess I would have thought it was far earlier, but
Yeah.
86. And then the inaugural class of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame
Yeah.
inductees.
Yeah.
I thought that was earlier too.
No, because that was like, I believe it's the year like the Beatles or the Beach Boys.
It was
Um,
Chuck Berry, James Brown, Ray Charles, Sam Cooke, Fats Domino, the Everly Brothers, Buddy Holly, Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis Presley, Little Richard, Robert Johnson, Jimmy Rogers, Jimmy Yancey, Alan Freed, John Hammond, and Sam Phillips. I mean, those are like the
oh,
originalists, you know,
oh,
like,
okay. So
yeah,
then probably 87 was when like the Beach Boys and the
yeah,
Beatles went
probably.
in and Mike Love made a fool of himself. That's great. I mean, people talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it is what it is. Those induction ceremonies are awesome. I love seeing bands get together sometimes that haven't played together in sometimes decades, and just playing. But yeah, no, 86. Yeah, that was when somebody was like, hey, we can make some money off of nostalgia.
Oh, that's always the impetus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then on January 28th, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded
Yeah.
73 seconds after liftoff from Cape Canaveral with all 7 crew members killed. I
Yeah,
actually vaguely recall this.
Yeah, I was in school. I remember this vividly. It's funny because we did not get to watch it. The group of kids I was with were not, I guess, considered gifted enough or smart enough or excelled enough to actually get the TV on the cart wheeled into the classroom. So I remember another class got to watch it and we didn't. So we got to hear like probably secondhand after it happened from other kids that were like, yeah, it blew up. And I remember at that time I was getting shots for allergies. And I remember sitting in the waiting room to get my allergy shot that afternoon after school and like wall to wall coverage about that. Yeah, I remember that, vividly. And the other thing I remember is like how terrible we used to be in terms of the jokes that like were instantly being told at their expense. And I guess you still get those, but at least now people realize how inappropriate it is. But like, I remember as a 12-year-old really telling some jokes about those astronauts that like, are just terrible,
Yeah. Kids are shitty.
yeah. But yeah, that was such a defining moment. That was one of those moments that like, it's probably like, people that were alive in the 60s can talk about when Kennedy got shot.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, that's, something that, the nation as a whole sort of remembers. If you look back now at like what led up to it and like people that were like identified problems, yeah, there's a 3 or 4 part documentary on Netflix about it. And there was a guy at NASA that was like, hey, we really shouldn't be launching in these conditions with the cold because like a certain piece will expand a certain way. And, they kind of just brushed the guy off. And hindsight's always 20/20, but like, it must not have been fun to be that guy, like, seeing it happen, being like, well, I kind of warned about this.
So,
but yeah, that also just shows that like a lot of times, like things go so far. It's to like the point where it's like the point of no return. But we're not here to bum each other out.
You know what's funny, not funny, is a lot of the stuff that comes up in like what happened at this time. A lot of it is kind of sad stuff. So let's move on. We're almost to the movie. But before we do, I wanted to ask you about your thoughts, fandom or otherwise, that you have to share about Kurt Russell, our ultimate everyman.
Kurt Russell is one of those, it's funny because you try and think about like your first exposure to somebody. And, Kurt Russell is one of those people, he had like that whole child actor career where he was doing the Disney movies. He had that guest starring spot on Gilligan's Island. So it's kind of like you're always kind of aware of that person. The first thing I probably remember him from is, as weird as this sounds, like Used Cars, whatever year that was. Like that was probably like maybe 82, 83, like probably like right around the time of The Thing. And we'll talk about it with this movie too, but like, we watched a lot of movies that like my dad wanted to watch,
Yeah.
So
that's
like,
the way that it was.
Yeah. So like odds are like Used Cars was probably like my first exposure to Kurt Russell. And then of course this same year we got Big Trouble in Little China, which for a kid my age, like completely hit like all the notes. I know like Ryan sort of asked like,
he had never seen it before.
Yeah. And he had also asked like who it was made for because it was also rated PG-13. I don't know. I don't remember going to see that movie in theaters, but it was definitely like, I think Carpenter in that movie, he was just trying to tap into like what really later became sort of big in like I want to say like the early 2000s when Louching Tiger came out.
Oh, yeah.
And like Kill Bill, like that whole like Shaw Brothers kind of mentality, like, and John Carpenter, as always, was way ahead of the curve there. So that was a movie that I always responded to. I remember when Big Trouble in Little China came out on DVD, it was like on my lunch break from work. At the time I was in a job that like we would deliver audiovisual equipment like hotels and stuff. So like on my lunch break between hotels, like I remember going to Suncoast and overpaying for that DVD. I was always a fan of Kurt Russell. So charismatic. And I think it was kind of like that everyman aspect of it. there was always a level of sincerity to his performances. You could relate to him. He looked like possibly a guy that would come over, that worked with your dad or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas Schwarzenegger and Stallone, like those guys always seemed like they were ripped from the pages of a comic book.
Yep.
Which is fine. I mean, I devoted a whole podcast to Stallone. And I love Schwarzenegger, but the kind of thing that, it was kind of like that Bruce Willis effect as well. It was kind of cool to see a guy that like you could feasibly like know in real life, doing stuff. And the other thing I really, really liked about Kurt Russell, and I think we talked about this either in a behind the scenes sort of Last of the Action Hero messenger chat or on one of the various episodes I've done. I always loved the fact that like Kurt Russell never fully pigeonholed himself into action movies. And this is, the movie we're going to talk about is a perfect example of that. But
Yep.
he was able to do a perfect, a Big Trouble in Little China, but then he was also able to do like comedy, like Overboard. But then also like right around the time he did The Thing and Escape from New York, he did like Used Cars, which was another comedy. Or John Carpenter's Elvis, which is like, I think when we talk about Elvises and people that have portrayed Elvis, I don't think anybody ever discusses what a great Elvis performance Kurt Russell gave.
It's on my list for this season. He's played Elvis more than once.
Yeah. He wore Elvis garb in 3,000 Miles to Graceland.
Yeah.
Who are you doing Elvis with?
So here's the deal. The ones that I kind of assume nobody will want to do with me, I do solo. So if ever anybody has like any specifics, like non-hit, then, or the lesser known ones. For example, I did Fox and the Hound solo, and I did Skate Town USA, Patrick's first role solo, just because I assume that there's people wouldn't want to cover them, but could be wrong.
If and when you get around to it and you feel like you need, a buddy for Elvis, I'm down. I'm
awesome.
John Carpenter's one of my all-time favorite filmmakers. And I love TV movies. I think TV movies are kind of a lost art in this day and age.
That's a good point. I liked them too.
There's just no need for them anymore.
Yeah.
It's funny. We came up on the anniversary of it, and I remember like Salem's Lot, like was that Stephen King. It was like a 2-night event, and I was like, man, if I was like 25 or 30, in the late 70s when that Salem Lot 2-night event came out, like that would have made my week. That would have been something that I was marking off on the calendar. Like,
yeah.
Now it's like everything's delivered, immediately. So there's no designation either between TVs and movies, because like basically anything that you watch that premieres on Netflix, it's made for Netflix, it's made for TV, but the budgets are so elevated that, made for TV movies still work within that, that realm of like, well, we need to, make it affordable, it's got to be profitable. So we need to be able to sell Campbell soups during the commercials. That's the thing I've always admired about Kurt Russell. And I think you can't have a career as long as he did without doing all those kinds of roles and exposing all those different sides of your capabilities as an actor. And I've loved seeing the stuff he's done in the last couple of years, Hateful Eight and the small role he had in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And Death Proof, which is just such a great role. I'm a Kurt Russell fan, and you know what? Now that we think about it, Escape from New York might have been my first exposure to him. I had a really cool aunt and uncle who would expose us to stuff that we probably shouldn't have seen. And they had either, a copy of Escape from New York that they had like either taped off TV or I can't imagine they had bought it because VHS was so expensive back then. But yeah, so like when we used to go visit them, or, my mom would need a night off. And so like they would babysit us. I remember watching Escape from New York, and like Escape from New York isn't a terrible, like, I mean, by today's standards, nothing in Escape from New York that's like today, if you rated Escape from New York, it would probably be PG-13.
Yeah.
So I don't think they were like, we were being exposed to anything terrible. Now that I think about it, Escape from New York is probably like the first thing that like I connected all the dots with, and I was like, oh, I know that guy.
Yeah.
That's another, like, I remember when that came on a DVD, how excited I was to be able to like watch that in widescreen and not on like a shitty pan and scan. I even like Escape from LA. I'm one of those.
Okay.
But I love, it's kind of funny. I think on the Big Trouble in Little China episode, you kind of mentioned how like, Kurt Russell was like John Carpenter's Robert De Niro to
Yeah, yeah,
Scorsese.
yeah.
And I love that. I love anytime that like a filmmaker, a director, and an actor just click the
Have
way
like
they
a
do, and they like working together. I don't know if you have any of those Carpenter or like Big Trouble in Little China on DVD or not, but
I do.
the commentary track I believe is Carpenter and Kurt Russell, or I might be thinking of the DVD commentary for The Thing. But either way, there's like 10-minute section where like they hadn't seen each other in enough time that like they start just going out on tangents and they're talking about their kids' softball team or something.
That's great.
Yeah, but I love that. I mean, I know
Mhm.
some people get tired of like, like filmmakers working with the same actor over and over again, but like you're going to be spending sometimes months and long hours every day. Like, why not make a movie with somebody that you enjoy spending time with?
Agree. I mean, people do it in all kinds of jobs. It happens. Now, do you recall seeing The Best of Times? Or did you watch it in the theater, or do you remember when you first watched it?
Yeah, probably whenever it debuted on HBO. So
Okay.
like, I don't know how long it
A
took
couple years
movies to
later,
get to-
maybe.
Yeah, but that's one again. Like this is a movie I wouldn't have been excited about, and this
Mm-mm.
was like totally one that I'm sure my dad put on, and we watched it because there was nothing else to do. But it's funny, I hadn't seen this movie in a really, really, really long time. It's funny what memories I had of it. I remember in my mind, and we're jumping to the end of the movie here, but in my mind, like the Dr. Death stuff was like
Oh,
all I remembered was Robin Williams on the line with Dr. Death.
oh my
And
God,
like,
really?
well, yeah. And watching it back now, I'm like, it's
Yeah.
such a small part of this
Mhm.
movie, but it's like, I think that's the only thing that like really, really super appealed to kids. Other, when he dresses up in the tiger costume and does all that mayhem. It was interesting to watch it again now as an adult, and I watched it 2 times in preparation for this recording. It's free on like Pluto and I think Freevee.
Tubi
So
and Roku, like the
yeah,
Roku channel, I think is how I watched
yeah.
it.
So I watched it
Mhm.
with commercials. It was fine. It was interesting watching this as an adult now, and I know it's not really thought of that highly or thought of at all.
Mm-mm.
Because did you call it a comedy at the beginning or did you call
Well,
it
a
a dramedy?
dramedy, a
Yeah.
sports dramedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like a super, super funny movie.
It's not, no.
There's a couple of moments where I chuckled. We have that whole sort of bit where like they're trying to watch the game while they're trying to have dinner with their wives.
Yeah, yeah. That was kind
Um,
of humorous.
There were a couple of moments, but like I would not call this a comedy by any stretch. And that's what I kind of appreciated about it. I think it was cool to see Robin Williams like in a role where he doesn't have to be going nuts and, at 90 miles an hour. It was kind of cool to watch us like a sort of subdued and more relaxed Robin Williams.
He was good.
Yeah. And I think Kurt's great in this too. And the
Agreed.
other thing, Katie, that really blew my mind with this movie is it's been 13 years since they played this high school game, right? So these are characters that are supposed to be, 30 years old, maybe?
30, 31,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Whereas in my kid's mind, I was like, these are guys that are in their mid 40s.
Oh my God. And I feel like I have this conversation with people all the time just about how people looked older than they
Yeah.
like a 30-year-old now looks to me like a child. So,
Well, yeah.
you know,
and
but-
also like, yeah, they would like also when they bring in that whole like offensive line or whatever, like they're all like look really run down and out of shape, It's so funny, like in this, when I watch this, I'm like, it's only been 13 years. I'm like,
yeah.
if they made the movie today, it would be like 25 years since they had
Yes.
played the game.
Craig, I thought the same thing this whole time. I'm like, they're literally like still young people. But at any rate, you know what? I actually had never seen this movie before.
Okay, cool.
It was one that we had taped from TV, probably like our VHS, like in our Memorex cabinet. I don't even think I was 5 yet when this movie came out. So that's never going to be the movie I choose if it's time to pick a movie. Even though when I was a kid, I didn't really know anything about it. It just seemed boring to me.
It was
So
an
I'd
adult.
nev-
It was a movie
yeah.
for adults. Yeah.
Yeah. So yesterday was the first time I had watched The Best of Times.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And another thing is, I think movies nowadays are remembered by how much they ran, on HBO or other TV channels. There are movies that were just in heavy, heavy rotation.
Yep.
And there are movies that aren't good that are still fondly remembered because of how often they were on TV. And yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like The Best of Times is just a movie that isn't really remembered that much. And, you know, that's kind of why when you were asking for like Kurt Russell movies to do, I was like, well, you know, as cool as it would be to talk about Big Trouble in Little China or The Thing, like Used Cars or The Best of Times,
Mhm.
would be really, really fun conversations as well.
Yeah. No, I like a more offbeat conversation. Like this is I'm curious. Listeners, tell us if you've seen this movie before and how you'd rank it among the Kirk movies. But let's get into The Best of Times. So January 31st, 1986 was when this was theatrically released, and it's PG-13. It on IMDb has a 6 rating.
Well, that's actually pretty decent.
Pretty good. I thought so too. However, on Rotten Tomatoes, it's 31%.
Ooh.
So yeah.
Yeah, but I wonder how many reviews that's even generated by.
Well, I'd have to double check, but
Yeah.
it's a mixed bag, we shall
Yeah.
say. Now, Roger Spottiswoode, I don't know if I'm
Yeah,
pronouncing
which
his
was-
name correctly, is the
was,
director.
Amazing for me to see. I had no idea that he was the director of this movie. And I also, you know, went back and looked because I'm a huge James Bond fan as well.
Oh,
And
okay.
he directed one of the Pierce Brosnan movies, Tomorrow Never Dies.
Oh, yep. Yep.
So as soon as I saw his name, I was like, oh my God, it's a James Bond director doing like this low key sort of sports comedy, which really surprised me. The writer surprised me as well, which in retrospect, it shouldn't have.
Yeah. So Roger Spottiswoode, some of the others, in addition to Tomorrow Never Dies, like Shoot to Kill, Turner and Hooch. He did some fun movies like that and Stalk My Mom Will Shoot. So
Yeah.
there's that. And then the TV movie, we were just talking about TV movies, the Matthew Shepard story.
Mm-hmm.
He directed that. And then to your point about the writer, who is Ron Shelton, and he is
Yeah.
known for sports movies. And so after he did this, I think is when he was made his name for himself enough to do Bull Durham. If
Yeah.
I'm remembering correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In
yeah.
addition to
Tin Cup,
White
I
Men
remember.
Can't, Tin Cup,
Yeah.
White Men Can't Jump, which, God, that was such a great movie. I loved that.
Yeah.
Yep, Tin Cup and Bad Boys 2, among
wow,
many
wow.
others.
So, I mean, from a writing perspective, it's kind of cool to watch this movie too and see like how obviously as a writer, he was always sort of using sports as a way to tell his stories, which it's always kind of cool to see the nucleus of that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And it was cool to see a name that I was familiar with. And that 31%, you know, I mean, I don't think I'm going to watch this movie again anytime soon.
Mhm.
But obviously I was able to watch it twice in the period of about 2 weeks. And it's an enjoyable enough movie. I mean, it's not overtly long. It's like an hour and 45 minutes or something.
Yep.
Again, you've got Robin Williams and Kurt Russell, and you've got a great supporting cast. So it's not a hard movie to watch. And I've always talked about that. People talk about like, oh, it's the worst movie I've ever seen when it comes to movies. And I'm like, well, the only way a movie can be really bad, in my opinion, is if it's boring.
Mm.
And I mean, if it's not boring, you can't really say it's the worst of anything. But like a movie's job at the end of the day is, like, for the most part, to entertain. And if a movie keeps your attention and entertains, it did what it did. Now,
Mhm.
you might have a different opinion in terms of like how entertaining this movie or how hard to watch it was. But this isn't a movie for me where like I was constantly checking my watch to see how much time was left.
Agreed. I think there are some really nice things about it. Like to your point about the casting, a lot of familiar faces. And that's the thing that I notice a lot when I'm rewatching these older movies is now I'm like, oh, that's the person in blah, 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 from 2 years ago or something. So it's not exceptional, but it's fine. I don't know. It unfortunately did not make money. Its
Yeah.
budget was $12 million and it only grossed 7.8 worldwide. So
yeah.
that's a little rough.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Like the worldwide aspect of it, I can totally understand because football is not something that I think outside of the United States people even care about. So having a movie that's sort of built around American football, I can see like an audience in Italy not caring about
Hmm.
that. But yeah, the other thing about this, and this isn't really tied to the box office or anything, this is just where my mind's going right now, is it's always cool for me, Katie, to watch movies that take place in a time period where our nostalgia kicks in and
Hmm.
we're like, people think of the 80s and they think of the 80s sort of cafe from Back to the Future 2 or really, really 80s movies. Whereas
Hmm.
this is a movie from 86 where, like, if you told me it was 1978, I would probably believe you because
Yeah, agree.
that's the coolest thing about watching movies like this for me is it helps me ground myself in, remembering that the 80s weren't all like, Boy George and Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
There was just regular,
regular.
small time or small town, living going on. And everything wasn't like bright, neon colors or Miami
Hmm.
Vice,
Oh yeah.
splashes of colors
Yep.
and things. So that was the other cool thing is like, this is a movie from 86, whereas like you put it on and you're like, well, it's not overtly 1986, but this is probably more in tune with what life was
That's
like
a
for
really good
adults
point.
in
Yeah.
1986. Also, I know we mentioned the cast a little bit. It was cool seeing Kirk Cameron, which you talked about Growing Pains was around this time as
It
well. So
it
like this must
premiered
have,
this the same year. So
yeah,
yeah,
because that was one thing I was like, wow, Kirk Cameron looks really, really young here.
he does. He
And then,
plays he plays Kurt Russell's son. Reno
yeah,
Hightower is Kurt Russell's character's name, and
yeah,
Kirk Cameron plays his son.
yeah. And then do you know who played the daughter?
It was,
Robin
oh,
Lively.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. And you know what I learned? Like literally, I learned like this week that Robin Lively and Blake Lively are half sisters.
Are they?
Yeah, they have the same dad.
You know, so that happened in The Best of Times twice then, because let's see, who is it? Holly Palance plays Ellie Dundee, who is Robin Williams' character's, who his name is Jack Dundee. She
Yeah.
plays his wife in the movie. And she, at the time, was actually married to the director.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she is Jack Palance's daughter.
Oh,
Jack
wow.
Palance, who, for those
Yeah.
listeners, he was one of the bad guys. He's done a lot of things, but we talked about him in our Tango and Cash episode.
Yeah. Wow. I had no idea. I never
Mhm.
made the connection with that last name that
Yeah,
she was, because she was in quite a few movies.
she was.
Yeah.
She was the nanny in The Omen,
Okay.
and she looks very familiar, but the face that I found more familiar was Pamela Reed's,
Oh, yeah.
who
She
plays
was another one.
Gigi,
Yeah.
who's Kurt Russell's wife. And she's a very familiar actress. She was in The Right Stuff, Proof of Life, and then a couple Arnold movies, Junior and Kindergarten Cop. And I noticed her most from playing Leslie Knope's mom in Parks and Rec. Did you watch that
Okay.
show?
Yeah, actually, Parks and Rec is a show I watched kind of after it had its run when Peacock first hit. I started watching that show on Peacock. So, yeah, that's my kind of comedy. But yeah, Pamela Reed. Yeah, I really remember her from Kindergarten Cop. She had like the goofy husband in that movie. I mean, they're just a rock solid cast here. Just a lot of journeyman actors. I think some of the funniest scenes are probably between Kurt and his wife, especially the one where like the main
Yeah.
scene with Kirk Cameron, where he comes out when Kurt comes to the house and he's talking about the mom moving out and he says, "Oh, she'll be back," and then he's supposed to help his mom take a box out, and Kurt
Mhm.
jumps in and takes it out, and she starts talking a little bit of trash about him. I think some of the probably funnier moments of the film are between the two of them.
Yeah, I agree. He is constantly wanting to leave him. So they live in, uh, really quickly, for those of you who haven't seen this in a while, just as a quick plot summary, we have Jack Dundee is a meek banker living in Taft, California. He constantly thinks about the 1972 high school football game between Taft and powerhouse Bakersfield. Dundee dropped a perfectly passed from quarterback and friend Reno Hightower, ending in a scoreless tie. He wants to replay the game and redeem himself, but has trouble convincing Reno and the town to replay the game. So Jack resorts to desperate measures to make the game a reality. And so in Taft is this little town, and they have to convince the whole town And I don't know about you, but I sort of, the way they portrayed Taft, or the way that we're introduced to this town, I'd assumed it was in Texas. It had
Yeah.
a more Texas feel
Y-
than
Yeah,
California.
because they talk about like the oil, like I guess how it was like a boom town.
Yeah.
I really liked the opening minutes of this movie where you sort of got Robin Williams giving a voiceover of like the town and why it's the way it is and how it ties into the football game that he is responsible for them losing. I really thought that was cool. And it was all shot like in that town, which I
Yeah.
thought was kind of neat too. I know
In
they
or
shot
around there.
the football game in a different high school's,
Mhm.
football field. But it was kind of cool. Because, that's again, anytime you watch a movie from California, normally you get like LA or San Francisco. But
Yeah.
you don't get like Taft. I guess it's in proximity to Bakersfield because they play Bakersfield, but kind of like, these non-glamorous California towns, which is
Yeah,
kinda
it's
neat.
just, well, where I was going with that, to your point about it. So they portray it as sort of a town you'd want to leave when you grow up. And so Reno's wife has been wanting to move to LA. She wants to be someone. And so she's constantly threatening or leaving him, and he kind of knows the drill. I like the names. I did note we have Jack Dundee and Reno Hightower. Those are very Stallone-esque names, don't you think?
Oh yeah. And it's funny too, because like we've got like around that time, Police Academy was popular, and one of the characters
Mhm.
was named Hightower. And
Mhm.
then isn't Jack Dundee wasn't that like Crocodile Dundee's name?
Mick Dundee.
Oh, Mick Dundee. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
Mick Dundee. Yeah.
But
Oh, I
yeah,
love that. But
but those are definitely, they look like they could be names that Stallone had in his notebook of names that I need to
yes,
use eventually.
yes, I thought that's totally what I thought. Now, I guess I thought I wasn't expecting this for some reason. Just before, what I don't know what I thought it was going to be, but I immediately learned that both of these guys are quote unquote losers, but in a different way. And I liked the journey of what their mindset was, and kind of how the football game is kind of, well, this is cheesy, but the football game is kind of what brought them both out. So like Reno, he's happy living despite the fact that he's crazily in debt. His wife keeps wanting to leave him. He's just like happy because in high school, he was a big deal, and he's happy being sort of that has-been high school character. And we learn later, he's actually scared. Like he wants to be remembered that way, and not, what if we lose again? And, now I'm a real loser, I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. And that's the like the part of this movie that completely resonated with me watching it as an adult, because
Mm-hmm.
it hits on things that people think about as they get older. You think about missed opportunities, or how your life would be if something had gone different. So that was like really the appealing part of this, was just seeing like these people deal with just the kind of stuff that people in life think about. Robin Williams, on the surface, he's a president at a bank. You'd think he'd be happy, but then he's going to see a call girl, and he just wants to talk. It's not
Yeah.
about sex. It's just about being able to sort of, I guess it's therapeutic or in a way, but without seeing a therapist or seeing somebody that's going to judge you.
To that point, I was just going to point out that he can't talk to his wife about it because his wife's father owns the banks, and he
Yeah.
is constantly, he won't let Jack forget that he's a loser, so to speak, and that he dropped the ball, and I gave you this job. I have to put up with you because of it. And so you can't go talk to your wife about that because it's her dad.
But I mean, that's really what gives this movie any kind of weight that it has. The other cool thing I kind of appreciated as a Stallone fan was, it's not in the spot where we normally get it, but we had the training montage where,
Oh, yeah.
everybody gets back into shape, and it starts with like Robin wanting them all to do like the 20-minute Jane Fonda style workout before they pivot.
Aerobics.
Yeah, before they pivot back to just like traditional training. But like, it's always great to see like a montage executed. And here it was interesting because like you get the training montage, and then you get another act of the film before they actually go and play the game. But I also thought like the final football game I thought was really, really well done. It's cinematic. We get the rain, so like the
Oh yeah.
field becomes incredibly muddy. But then we also get, like, during halftime, we get the reveal that, like, Robin Williams' character is the reason that everybody got energized to play the game. And then Kurt basically benches him. And then the other thing I really, really thought was cool was the end. They get to basically recreate that
The same
past
scene. Yeah.
that has been haunting him. Now, I wanted to sort of get your take on this because Kurt benches him and he basically takes away his opportunity to redeem himself. And then towards the last play, one of the players says, "You're not going to throw to him." And he says, "Of course I'm not." And then they get to the whole Dr. Death thing where Rob Williams isn't able to get open. And then Kurt basically says, "You better catch this." But what was your feeling on whether or not, like, Kurt was going to make that pass or not? Because he told the other person he wasn't going to throw to him. So I was curious, like, watching it, like, what your takeaway was and that for the character's motivation and things like
Yeah.
that.
Good question. So there's a scene where, I don't know, they're on like their fourth chance. I don't know football that well, but we've seen Robin Williams can't get open because of the Dr. Death guy. And so this is like their last chance, 4 down, whatever, however football works. And so he calls a timeout with 5 seconds left and they're down. They're down like 7 or 8 points. So they need this touchdown, or they're down like 6 points or something. Whatever. They need this.
Yeah.
They need a touchdown to win the game. So he calls a timeout and Jack and Reno have a discussion, like a true heart to heart, where he's like, "I will get open." And I think they have a thing between them because they've been friends for so long. And he's like, "I need this. And I promise you that I'll get open. Just throw the ball to me." So I think in that moment,
He
Kurt,
convinced him.
he's like, "Okay, that's what we're doing." But then he has to tell the other guys, like, "No, I want to," like, I think he just tells them that he wants to win so that there's, I don't know, I don't know if it was so that they're surprised as well, but I think that he was convinced he was going to throw to Robin Williams the whole time. What did you
Really? Okay. So you didn't think it was like that speech convinced him?
No, the speech convinced him.
Okay.
Like the timeout.
Yeah.
The speech, the conversation that the two of them have together is what convinced him.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
I
That
don't
was,
think he was going to.
yeah, that's my takeaway as well. And I also love that pass. It's probably the single funniest moment in the movie where I think this is one of the movies where you know how it's going to end.
Of course.
Because it's that kind of movie. You know, he's not going to drop the ball and everybody's going to go home bummed out. So it's just a matter of how you're going to get there. And I kind of loved like how he didn't immediately catch the ball. He kind of like one hands it and then it like kind of wraps around his body.
He fumbles
before
it a lot.
Yeah, before he finally secures it. Yeah, I dug that. I think it's a well shot sequence, and so it didn't surprise me that a director like Roger Spottiswoode was involved with that. But this movie sends you home exactly the way it's supposed to send you home, and again, I don't think anybody expected it to end any other way. But then that's the beauty of making that film anyway, is like the journey and how you get there and how it's executed and how it's performed. And in that sense, I think the movie kind of succeeds.
I agree. Both men get their redemption by this game. And had Robin Williams not tricked Reno into it, he wouldn't have had his chance to, because there was a moment where Reno has to, there's a fire lit under him and he has to take charge and be the leader that he once was and prove to himself that he can still be that person. And then Robin Williams' character, Jack, gets his redemption because that's what he's wanted this whole time. He's like, "I can catch that." I don't love the message that sends, but it's that kind of a movie. And they both make up with their wives. And now finally Jack gets his due respect from his father-in-law. And the father-in-law, we get a nice little reward from him falling in a mud puddle after being such a jerk. So that was nice. What did you think about the Kid Lester storyline that were shown at the beginning, and then there's a little bit of a payoff at the end?
Yeah, I think again that was kind of defining how like a town's reputation could be tied to or a town's morale could be tied to something like a game or the Kid Lester story. Yeah, and then obviously that old man, that was him, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I dug it, and I always dig subtlety. I always appreciate when a filmmaker is like, we don't need to slap you in the face with something. So I always kind of appreciate subtlety, and I think overall that like it was a cool backstory because it kind of established like the overall mood of the town. Like I think you even see like there's a scene in the movie where they're in front of a movie theater and it says it's under renovation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we flash to it later and it shows that it's going to have its grand reopening or whatever.
Mhm.
So I think that was kind of cool too, because it kind of showed that like the town was kind of rejuvenated,
Yeah.
on the upswing, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That was
appreciated
nice.
it.
Yeah. I wasn't sure. I guess my feelings were, I don't know if they either didn't do enough with it or should have let it go. I wanted a touch more about the Kid Lester stuff because I had
Yeah.
kind of forgotten about it, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, until the very end when the old man reveals that he's Kid Lester.
Yeah.
But to your point about it being subtle, I can see that aspect as well.
It's always tough, because it's like, do you want to hit people over the head with it, or do you
Yeah.
want to like, that's why movies ultimately succeed or fail. It's based on how they handle something. But yeah, I think this movie's worth. I mean, especially since you can watch it for free. Odds are you have access to one of the streaming platforms that it's streaming free on. I think it's worth watching if you're ever looking for something different to watch, especially if you're like a Robin Williams fan or a Kurt Russell fan. For a lot of people, like yourself included, it was your first exposure to it. So
Mhm.
it must have been really cool to be like, oh, I'm about to watch a Kurt Russell movie,
Yeah.
that was made when Kurt was sort of in his prime. So that must have been really cool to be able to be like, yeah, I'm watching a brand new Kurt Russell movie
Yeah.
that's,
It is. It
30
is.
some odd plus years old.
Well, why do you think that it tanked? Like, why do you think it didn't do well at the box office?
That's really surprising. And I'd have to go back and watch the trailer for this. I don't think I watched the trailer.
Yeah.
But I'd imagine that, and I think John Belushi kind of suffered from it. I just finished reading a John Belushi biography, and they talk about like his post Blues Brothers and Animal House failures. And I think it might have been the same thing with this, where Robin Williams, everybody kind of knew him as like the crazy Mork from Mork, a very high energy personality. And this movie it's not that. You get a more subdued acting performance out of Rob Williams. So I wish I had watched the trailer, because I wonder how they framed this movie. Did they frame it as a wacky comedy, and then people saw it and they were like, well, this isn't a
not-
wacky
yeah.
comedy. And then word of mouth probably killed it. Either way, word of mouth probably killed this, because they were probably like, it's not a flat out Robin Williams comedy. And I think Kurt Russell was always kind of dependent on, like, I don't think Kurt ever made or broke a movie by him being in it, which isn't to discount his draw
Right.
as an actor. But I
actually-
mean, like,
Yeah. I was just
Yeah.
trying to think, but that's a good observation.
yeah. So yeah, I think it was probably just a matter of it wasn't the movie people were expecting.
Mhm.
And word of mouth was probably just like, yeah, it's not a crazy wacky comedy. And I also kind of feel that like sports movies weren't, I think sports movies were about to explode again, because like probably the next year we got Major League, which was kind of like a crazy comedy.
Mhm.
We also had that Goldie Hawn movie, Wildcats, which
Oh,
was
yeah.
about like
Mhm.
her like coaching a team of misfits. And then all the other Ron Shelton stuff, like, Bull Durham and Tin Cup. So I think this movie might have been just a little before that,
Yeah.
but it also didn't tap into like, the underdog aspect the way that like a movie like Rocky did, where
Yeah.
it had a certain
Yeah.
pedigree to it, and it was very, very elevated filmmaking. So I think it was kind of probably just middle of the road enough to not really get anybody excited about it.
I fully agree. If you have a few more minutes, there's a few
Yeah.
pieces of trivia.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So apparently both Robin Williams and Kurt Russell both played high school football before becoming actors.
Oh, nice.
And they performed their own stunts in this movie.
Oh, sweet. So like all
Um,
the football stuff we see with Kurt was Kurt.
Yeah, it's not
Oh,
body
nice.
doubles. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't know that. And I love hearing that. I very much appreciate that. We already talked about Bull Durham. So this was Shelton's first sports movie. So maybe he was just cutting his teeth a little bit.
Yeah. Well,
Maybe
and
that's part
thankfully
of
he
it.
wasn't discouraged either.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, we've already talked about how Kirk Cameron plays Reno and Gigi's son. Now, Tracy Gold, I looked for this and I missed it. Tracy Gold plays an unnamed friend of Jack and Holly's daughter, or
Okay.
Ellie's daughter.
I don't remember seeing her, but I can tell you the exact scene she was in.
You can?
It's when,
Okay.
Well, it's when they're having dinner and her friends come over and she like leaves the dinner table and all her friends are at the front door. That's got to be the scene.
Okay. I missed it, but
Yeah.
So-
well, no, I don't remember seeing Tracy
Yeah.
Gold, but like in the back of my head, I'm like, there was a group of girls there.
yeah, it had to have been
Odds
then.
are she was one of those girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so obviously, by the time this movie released, Cameron and Gold were playing brother and sister in Growing Pains. And then on the same thread, Russell played Dexter Riley in The Computer That Wore Tennis
Wore-
Shoes.
Okay. Yeah.
1969.
Yeah.
Well, Kirk Cameron played that same role in 1995 when they did a
Oh.
television remake for it.
Oh, wow.
So
That's
there's a
cool.
little connection.
A
Yeah.
connection after the fact. Yeah.
hmm
Wow.
And then the real kid Lester died in 1916. So I didn't even know that was a real person, but apparently it's
Yeah.
a real person, and he died in 1916 at the age of 26. So it couldn't have been.
Yeah. So they got
It's
a
just
little
one of those
creative
things.
there with the
Mhm.
timeline. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Do you have any final thoughts before we kind of close?
No, again, I'm glad we were able to talk about this movie because it gave me an excuse to watch it again as an adult, which I think it's, kind of an adult movie. I always appreciate talking about movies that haven't been covered to death on podcasts because they're movies that, I'm not going to say are forgotten, but it's kind of cool that this movie will, odds are somebody's going to watch it at some point and Google it. I do that all the time when I watch a movie. I'm like, okay, what podcast is talking about this? So who knows?
Oh,
Maybe a
okay.
couple of years from now, somebody's going to watch this and they'll be like, oh, let me see if there's a podcast. And they're like, oh, Retromade did an episode.
Yeah.
So, and again, it's always cool to sort of talk about a movie that hasn't been talked to death. And especially since it was your first time watching it, I'm glad you were able to watch a movie that you hadn't really been exposed to before. So again, it's free. You don't have to spend any money to watch this. Like if you're ever like on a Saturday, a rainy Saturday, put it on. It's worth things you can do with an hour and 45 minutes of your time.
That's true. And I like movies you can kind of have on in the background and only like, you don't have to super pay attention. I kind of like that too.
Well, it's funny on your Big Trouble in Little China episode, you talked about plot with Ryan.
Oh,
No, and I'm the same way. And like I mentioned, I'm a big James Bond fan. And for me, like I've never followed those James Bond plots. Like I don't care. Like ultimately, it doesn't really matter what the bad guy's doing. We just know he's bad. We know
Yeah.
Bond's going to go to a bunch of different cities,
Mhm.
finding out why the guy's bad. And it's funny when we do like our Stallone show episodes and we kind of
I love those,
oh, thank
by the
you.
way.
But like when we're doing like the plot rundowns, I'm like, for me, I'm like, a lot of times I'm the same way as you. Like the plot is kind of like, I don't get too caught up in it. I just rewatched a bunch of Mission Impossible movies and it's the same thing. I'm like, yeah, there's like shadowy, figures doing shadowy things, but like, ultimately I want to watch like Tom Cruise hanging off of a plane.
Yeah. Take it for what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Now I was going to say a lot of times plots can really trip up enjoying a movie.
That's a good point, especially if it's your first time watching like an older movie and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
your brain has trouble with it sometimes.
Yeah.
While The Best of Times may not have been a hit, there was a lot of other awesome songs and TV and toys that made January of 1986 seem like last. But we must now return to present day reality until the next Retromade episode. Craig, I cannot thank you enough for joining me today to talk Kurt Russell, Robin Williams, The Best of Times. You're a man of many talents. And tell us where we can find some of the projects that you're working on.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for having me. Being a guest host on a podcast is so awesome because you get a lot of the benefits with not a lot of the work that comes with podcasting. Like basically, you told me to be here at this time, and I was able to sit down and talk the movie with you. So thank you for that. I love guesting. In terms of where you can find me and what I'm doing, I do have a landing page. I'll send you the link.
Yeah, I'll link it in the show notes, guys.
Yeah, but that's got all my stuff. I'm probably a month away from releasing my third album of all instrumental music, and not to get too in the weeds.
That's
Um,
awesome.
my previous projects, I've always worked with deadlines. I'm very deadline. Like for me, like if I don't have a deadline, odds are I'm not going to do it.
I am the same
Um,
way.
and so for this batch of songs, I said to myself, I'm going to make a collection of music that's got no deadline. So it's going to challenge me in a couple ways. It's going to challenge me in the fact that like, eventually I'm going to have to finish it. But also like I'm not working under like super time constraints. My first one I made in the month of July. Like I wrote and produced and executed it all in a 30-day period.
Oh, wow.
Which was really cool. It was a cool experiment. It was a cool way to flex muscles I hadn't flexed before. But for this one, it was cool that like I just finished a song earlier this week that I had initially worked on almost 2 years ago. And there were aspects of it that I hadn't figured out yet. So it's kind of neat to like start something, put it in the closet for a while, and then come back to it because it's almost like you're collaborating with yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's like relearning, like, why did I do this? Or why did I play this chord or whatever? And then figuring out how to finish it. And like I said, it like for me, it's like solving a puzzle or a math problem or something. So I'm really looking forward to that. I do have a Bandcamp page. I think if you search Craig Cohen or Mr. Craig Cohen on Google, you'll find links to most of my stuff. But on my Bandcamp page, you can listen to everything. You can listen on Spotify if you search Craig Cohen. But
That's
yeah,
impressive.
oh, thank you. And then also the Slycast feed outside of Last of the Action Heroes podcast is still active. So there's hours and hours of me analyzing Stallone movies with people. And then also I do have an independent feed for a show I did called Big Screen Book Club, which we talked about movies and movies that were adapted, which is pretty neat. That never really took off the way I thought it was, mainly because it's a lot easier to sit down and watch a 90-minute movie than sit down and read a 200 or 300-page book.
That's true.
And then also the most recent like podcasting stuff I've done outside of the network was a show I did called Conversations at Jackrabbit Slim's, which was sort of a deep dive into Pulp Fiction, where each episode I sat down with a different fan of the movie and we kind of just hash it out. So, but all that's included in that landing page that
Okay,
you'll
good.
have. There's plenty of ways to find me if you're at all interested in listening to me blather or, listen to the strange music that I create. And either way, I appreciate the exposure.
That's awesome. Aw. I'll have the link to his stuff in the show notes, everyone.
Mhm.
And thank you all for listening or watching. Please remember to share the show. And remember, a review and or a rating does go a long way to help other retro junkies find the show. Until next time, be kind. Rewind.